But there was a point where you were physically breaking.
How do you know? How the do you know this? I never told anybody this. I might have mentioned it once or twice in my whole life. Yes, we were setting them up. How the do you know? What are you talking to listening to my conversations?
There's a police story being told here in New York this week.
The NYPD is under the gun again.
Cops dealing drugs, stealing money and guns, shaking down shopkeepers.
And a new breed of corrupt cop. None was more notorious than Officer Michael Dowd.
He was dirty up to his eyeballs.
The story of cops and robbers. See if you can tell one from the other.
A once-in-a-generation corrupt cop.
I'm putting bags in my coat. White powder was flying. I said, pay dirt.
Michael Dowd did not have any fear.
Because the cops around me would never give me up.
There were not any other cops like Michael Dowd.
He was a criminal. Dowd was a criminal.
How many crimes and acts of corruption do you estimate you committed as a New York City police officer?
Hundreds.
It's over. Again.
And excuse me for the intro.
do what you have to do. Are you ready?
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Wide Awake podcast. My name is Joshua Rubin, and I am your host. Today, my guest is Michael Dowd. He is the dirtiest cop in the history of New York City. During the 80s, Michael patrolled the streets of Brooklyn. He was also the leader of a ruthless criminal network that stole money and drugs, ultimately resulting in New York's biggest corruption scandal ever. Mike served 12 years in prison for his activities during that time and is widely considered as one of the most corrupt cops of all time.
Amen.
Is that true?
Well, that's what they say.
How do you feel about that?
Well, if you look me up, I don't make the top rankings of the top 20 dirtiest cops, but I think overall the activity that I was involved in just brought to light the depths of the scandalous activity that was taking place at that time. And not just my own, but in total.
And just to start off with, where were you born?
So I was born in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably within 4 miles from where I ended up working in Brooklyn. But of course, like most civil servants, my father was a firefighter, and he moved his family out to Long Island because it was affordable and there was grass, a place to raise children. And so there were 7 children in the family, and I was number 3 of the 7.
And what were you like growing up?
I was actually a very good kid. Yeah, I was the model son. Yeah, and that's the odd thing when I look back at my life and I say to myself, where the hell did I go wrong? But I break it down to several different places, because one of the things that I learned while growing up was that you're supposed to be more than what your father is. I mean, I don't know if they still teach that today, but that's how I was raised. And my father was a firefighter, so by being a police officer, it was basically the same, status in life. So he always drilled into me, you got to be more. You got to be a doctor or a lawyer or some kind of an accountant or something like that. So I went to accounting school, and I did fairly well at it. But I took the civil service tests as backup, and well, the backup became Plan B and A all at once. So I became a police officer.
And just before we get into any of that, can you just list some of the crimes that you were accused of?
Well, it starts.
That smirk.
It starts out as Well, because it's funny. Because what's funny about it, which is not funny, right? But what's hilarious about the whole concept is many of us have done the same things in this world. It's just that I've been found guilty of it, or at least admitted to it. So, racketeering, extortion, gambling, robbery, larceny, robbery again. Robbery again. I mean, when you have a gun on you, whenever you take something from someone, it's a robbery. And when you use force, it's a robbery. So that was probably one of my most acclaimed crimes, was robbing drugs, selling drugs, snorting drugs, sharing drugs, stealing drugs, and perpetuating criminal organizations by helping them to perpetuate their business,
And why did you decide to become a police officer?
Well, I decided to become a police officer because I intimated earlier that it was a backup plan to my actual dream careers, which were in some kind of profession, i.e., in my case, accounting. I had sought an accounting career, But, you know, I tell you what happened. So along the way, my accounting instructor in Suffolk County Community College, Mr. Weinstein, I think he's still there today. I'm not sure, but I know he was a couple years ago. And I sat down with him one day and I said to him, you know, I have an opportunity to take the police job or continue on in accounting school. And he looked at me and he said, accounting's not for everybody. He said, and your type personality, do you want to sit behind a desk for 20 or 30 years? And I just said, oh, no. Sitting behind a desk, I didn't really fit too well. It was hard for me to sit for an hour podcast, right? So I as soon as he said that, I said, you know, and I had no mentors. Like, so I grew up in a civil service family. My father was a firefighter. My uncles were police officers. And so I was used to that lifestyle. And so, you know, it's almost like you just go right into it. So it was easy enough for me to matriculate right into being a police officer in that respect. So it sort of fell into it, you know.
And what was your training like?
As a police officer?
Yeah. What kind of training did you go through?
So I would say being trained as a police officer is more, it's not so as physical as it should be, by the way. It should be more physically demanding, I would recommend. But it's more mental and sociological training, i.e., teaching people how to learn to deal with other cultures and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, the law itself as you go over the law and how it applies to things. So yeah, it's more book work and more like college. So going to the police academy, I would equate more like going to college. And then as far as the physical activity involved, I'd say it's like going to college and playing on a sports team, but not at A level, more at B and C level, because the physical activity is just not quite stringent enough.
One of the things that was mentioned in the documentary made about you was the integrity training.
Right, yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, what? What's to say the integrity training was a farce? To be blunt, it was a farce. And just give me 1 second. And why I say it was a farce is because, and I say this with real vigor, they should have had a guy like me teaching the integrity training. Not because of my level of integrity, obviously, but because by showing what happens to people when they go off the integrity rail and go on the other side, because we had people come in from internal affairs and speak to us, and they spoke in generalities, and they give you a couple of examples of people that got in trouble, but they don't instill in you you don't become filled with the integrity aspect. You become imbued with the brotherhood aspect in the academy. But the integrity aspect becomes the question of try not to get to that area where your integrity is
called into question.
So how do you prevent that? So our whole integrity training was to prevent that from being the case. That's how I took it. And I think I would suggest most people did, because there's no different than anybody in the academy, that just to not get in a predicament where your integrity would be questioned. And so what does that mean? So that really basically means is have somebody with you, another police officer, that would agree with you. So if someone questions an act of integrity that may have come your way, that you have someone to co-sign on whatever the activity was that you did. So someone might suggest that you took some money from them. And that, by the way, happens quite often, while it's usually not accurate. Usually. In my case, it would have been the opposite, probably. But
people thought you took less than you did.
No. Well, you're always accused of taking more than you take, no matter what, okay? That's generally the rule of thumb. But even if you take nothing, you get accused of it. And that's the horrible thing about being a police officer. Oftentimes, you'll get accused of doing something that you didn't do because people want to lessen the burden of the crime that they themselves have committed. And they want to turn the focus on what they've done to you.
So you're saying that you think police officers get treated worse when convicted?
No, well, of course, they absolutely do. But that's not the question that really I'm addressing. What I'm addressing is police officers get accused of things that they didn't do.
Okay.
More frequently than what they did do. And so one of the odd things that I've come across in the last 20, 30 years, and I've spoken occasionally about, is that the minute you become a police officer, the very second, is the very second that the whole job is trying to take your position away from you. And it's a very odd position to be in. So, for example, if you're a mechanic at a shop and you have value, you walk into a shop and you're there 6 months. After 6 months, you're humming and you're working and you're making money for the company, you're making money for yourself, you're getting accolades, you're getting raises. Well, when you go into the police academy, the minute you enter the police academy, within 6 months, when you graduate the academy, they're looking for a reason to take your job. If that makes sense to you. Like, did you screw this up? Did you screw that up? Did you do this wrong? Did you do that wrong? Whereas in society, in the commercial industry, they're looking to raise your level up. It's very, do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, yeah.
It's always someone's looking to impugn you, to attack you. You're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, it's really, and that's the stress of being a police officer. I'm like, I say to myself, why the fuck? We curse on this show? I don't know. Why the fuck have a job that the whole time you're in the job, they're trying to take it from you? It's so oxymoronic, if that makes sense.
It does. And I mean, when you started, was it what you thought right at the beginning?
So when I started, yes, it was in the beginning what I thought it would be, because I was in the police academy and everything's altruistic. It's all the way it's supposed to be. They're happy to have you there, even though they're a little tough on you because they want to drill certain things into you. It's a congenial, it's rah-rah. And then when you hit the street, it's totally opposite. So it's like total opposite.
And can you walk me through a day in the life as a New York City police officer?
Well, I could probably tell you, I could start how I would start my day. So I would show up at work at, so roll calls at 7, let's say roll calls at 7 o'clock. I think it's 7:05. I can't remember. It's been a while. So if it roll calls at 7:05, I'd stroll in about 5 to 7, and then be dressed in time and squared away in time to show up for roll call on time, do a roll call, get assigned your sector or your foot post, and you would head out the door onto freedom, okay? So the minute you left the police quarters or the precinct, like 7-5, let's say, the minute you walked out of the door of the 7-5, you're on your own, you and your partner. So it was fun in that respect, right? Because you would leave the confines of the structure of the police department, right? The building and everything, and you would enter a patrol car, and the street's your own now, right? You run the street. You are the police. You run what goes on out there. And so, you'd start your day, you'd go get a coffee or something, or a bagel or whatever, some cream cheese if you like, and you'd post up somewhere, a favorite spot that you might want to see that's got a lot of activity going on, or just maybe even where the ladies are walking by, but when you're in the ghetto, it's not that many good spots, I will be honest with you. But you find a spot. You find a favorite spot, and you'll go there.
So did you work mainly in the ghettos?
Mainly, yeah. At some point, I ended up in Greenpoint / Bushwick area, which was 50-50. Some areas were very, very nice, and other areas when it was somewhat dingy. But even the dingy in there were like heaven compared to the ghetto. But so yeah.
And can you tell me about the 7-5 precinct?
So it's hard to tell you about something that you actually lived because it becomes you, right? So it's like, can you tell me about your home life? So, I woke up and then I had...
But it was considered as one of the toughest precincts because of the area it was in, right?
Right. Well, because it was a high crime precinct. Shootings, robberies, murders, and rapes went on all day. Like every day, if not every other day. There was constant activity, I would say. And so, for example, you probably had 30,000 robberies in the 7-5 precinct in 1 year. Yeah. So it's a lot of robberies, right? And so that means in the course of a day, you and your partner are probably handling 3 or 4 armed robbery calls. And that's how busy it was. And I say an armed robbery call is a very heavy job to respond to besides your typical family dispute, your aided case where someone's fell down and broke an arm or leg, or a typical fight between brothers, or an establishment owner calling you saying that someone refused to pay. You know, you could be. The day never was boring, and generally in the course of any day, you responded to a shooting, which required work. And I mean by work, I mean investigative work, time on scene, securing a location, taking an individual to a hospital if they were in the condition that would require immediate saving of life, or if they would oftentimes too far gone, you wouldn't transport somebody that was too far gone. You would just have an ambulance, you know, either declare them dead or put them in an ambulance and take them to the hospital where they declare them dead, or try to save their life, you know. And then many times that happened, surprisingly so. I mean, remember one time I got shot 9 times, and I was putting a 95 tag together, which 95 tag is the DOA. So it's we call it a DOA tag, you know, and I was filling out the DOA tag, and I left it at the scene of the hospital. As I went back to the precinct, I put an investigate DOA complaint report in, because that's how you would label the complaint report, investigate DOA, and so on and so forth. It turned out that the guy lived, and I didn't know he lived. And so about a week and a half later, I see the woman that was the wife of the man that was shot. So I saw her in the precinct. She went to use the precinct telephone. There's a payphone. Everybody comes to the precinct sometimes because it's safer, you know. Not really. Guys got shot in front of the precinct many times. But so she would come into the precinct, and she used the phone to call somebody. So I saw her, and I said, oh, by the way, I'm really sorry about your loss. And she looks at me. She goes, what loss? I go, your husband, I know he died a couple days ago, whatever, a week ago. And she goes, oh, no, he's outside there. He's outside. He's outside on the other phone. There's a phone in front of the precinct and one inside the precinct. I said, what? She goes, yeah, he's outside over there. So, I mean, this guy was as white as a sheet. It's a white sheet. I mean, they're dead. You're dead. When you're white like a sheet, you're dead. Believe me. I've been there many times. Not me personally. But so I said, what? She goes, yeah. I said, here's a guy who got shot 9 times.
And survived.
And he's alive. Like, and I'm angry, not at him for living, but like, I know I get shot in the elbow and I'll fucking die. You know, this guy's shot 9 times. I'm talking about kill shots. He's fine. He's out there right now. A week and a half later, he's outside the precinct, walking around.
That's insane.
I mean, this is the way life was in the ghetto. It was just insane.
And at this point, how much were you making as a police officer?
So when I started out as a police officer in Queens, and I moved over to the 7-5 precinct in Brooklyn. And so I didn't start out making a dime. You know, what happened was eventually I came across the moment I actually, never mind that car scene, right? But where I made the guy give me some money for lunch, a lobster lunch, I said. No, make sure it was
I'm talking about before you went corrupt.
Right.
I'm talking about how much is like
how much does a police officer make?
How much does an officer make?
So at that time, I was clearing about 300, and now, not in the academy, but at that time now. So when I'm in the 7-5 as an active patrolman, I was making about $305 a week clear.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was a little. I mean, it's the 80s, so I mean, it's not.
It was worth more.
It's you can times it by 2.5 probably right now, right? But so that was about what I was making, and it's still not enough money, right? But it never is, and no money is ever enough. So there's no justification for anything you do. But the fact is that money was scarce. Yeah. So.
And how did you go from being just a normal police officer to a corrupt police officer?
So that's the trick that I sometimes wonder, how the hell did this happen? Because I was inherently a good person, and I still think that I am, although some actions and things that I have done may indicate otherwise. But I think to my core, I'm a decent human being. And so what I did was I began to justify why I could do this. And I said to myself, I'm not taking money from good people, right? So, because that's the last thing anybody wants to do and be known for, and to live through, to live through their soul. I do have a soul, I guess, people may say I don't, but I do. And my soul, I didn't want to hurt good people. If that makes sense, I hope your audience would understand that.
Believe me, my audience is used to seeing gangsters, killers. They've seen it all.
Right. So the fact is that I chose to take advantage of the people that were taking advantage of people. So you're taking advantage of people, and you're corrupting a system by distributing narcotics, and or any organized crime type of activity, I would never have. I wouldn't feel any impingement of guilt upon my soul if I took something from you.
If you rob a robber, you're a robber.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, that's technically you are, but is Robin Hood a bad guy? He took from the rich and gave to the poor.
But who did you give it to?
Yeah, well, I gave it to some poor me. I was poor. Son of a bitch. I mean, but I took care of people along the way. I wasn't a one-way motherfucker. Let me tell you right now. I took care of people. I had a lot of people, a lot of hanger-oners. Okay, and so So, but the fact is that I took from the people that were taken from you and me. So,
can you tell me about the first time that you played outside of the law?
Well, I'm not going to tell you about the first time because that's boring. Because it was about the lobster lunch with the kid with the automobile. But I'll tell you about the next time. And that was a little exciting for me because that was, actually that was the second or third time. I can't remember now. Because one time was a homicide where the guy had, so I can tell you about the homicide. That was an interesting one because it was on Sutter Avenue, right by Vermont Street. There was a bodega. Bradford. It was on Vermont and Bradford, I believe. And it was a bodega, and I forget the owner's name, but I loved him. He was a great man. So right behind the bodega, but on Sutter. So the bodega faced the street. I want to say Bradford. The bodega faced Bradford, but it probably had a Sutter Avenue address. And behind the building, so on Sutter, was an attached, let's call it a smoke shop, but it's basically back in the day they were candy stores. There was no candy in the store. There was just marijuana. And like there is today, right? Legal marijuana pretty much in many places. Even if it's not legal, they're still selling it, which is very odd. But anyway, I wish I had a shop. But there's a lot of money in it now. So there would be so this shop was known for selling marijuana, tray bags. They call it a tray bag. I don't know if you're familiar with the terms. It was a tray bag. Tray bag is a $3 bag of marijuana. And so this guy would sell hundreds of tray bags a day. And then so we get a call to that tray bag spot. And man shot. And usually when you get a call to a location, like you can tell by the call, the specificity of the call, if there was probably something going down. So I was pretty sure I was showing up on the scene where someone was shot. So when we arrived to this location, oddly enough, we could get in because that's not always the case. So someone allowed the front door to be open, and then there's a back front door. So as you would walk in the vestibule, there's another door to go into the service area of this candy store. I couldn't open the door, but when I opened it, it was not closed, locked. It was like it would partially open. Well, the reason I couldn't open it was because the guy's head was holding the door closed. The guy on the floor, dead. Yeah. So so eventually we were able to push the door open, slide the guy's head back, and I was able to enter the location, my partner and myself. And there was a guy over the body at this point. When he saw us come in, he ran over and jumped over to the body and began to work on the friend, whoever he was in the store. And he was shot in the head and one bullet. And I'm looking around and saying, this just doesn't make sense. Because usually the door would be open from the front, and the guy's body wouldn't be against the door this way. So that to me meant that someone from the back of the building shot the guy. I mean, doing a little investigative discovery immediately. I'm like, this seems odd. So anyway, but the guy was quite concerned, the owner of the establishment of the tray bag spot. And one of the utterances he said is like, oh, I told him to stop fucking with these guys' women. Okay. That was a little odd. I mean, it is your buddy's dead, on the floor, and you're telling me you told him not to do this. Okay. In the meantime, to my right was a pile of marijuana, sizable amount, which had already been mostly removed, by the way, yet there was still 3 or 4 pounds of marijuana there. And which I didn't know that most of it was removed, but later we would find out. And next to that, there was a pile of cash. Not a lot of cash, but probably, I would say, in the neighborhood of $6-7 grand. But there was a small stack of hundreds, which I ended up putting in my pocket. So what happens is in comes the sergeant, who's a nice guy, friend of mine, sort of. We get along quite well. He was an older gentleman. To me, I was 22, okay? Maybe 23. So then the sergeant was probably 43. So he's had 20 years already on the job. And he goes, this is it? This is all you got here? Like a couple pounds of pot and $3-4 grand, whatever it was in cash. I don't remember exact numbers at this point. And I felt like he knew that I stole money. So I went in my back pocket and took out the $500 or $600 that was there. And I said, well, I also this. My guilt immediately, I said, also this, I separated me. I didn't want it to get stolen by anybody else like me, right? So
I was just keeping it safe.
Yeah, I was keeping it safe, right? So he looks at me and shakes his head. And so that night, after we handled the homicide and did all the investigative work, and we broke the case immediately, it was the kid. The kid shot his pal, killed him. He got 5 years, by the way. So he did 3. Yeah, nice system, right? He got 5 years for killing his friend, executing his friend. Not life like you're supposed to, but he executed his friend, got 3 years. So that night, when I was out with the boss in a bar on Long Island, I used to remember the name. I can't remember anymore. It was, I said to him, Sarge, let me ask you a question. He says, well, I said, what if I kept that money? He says, as far as I'm concerned, if you get it before I get there, it's yours.
So he kept it.
No, he didn't say he kept it. I don't know what he did with it. In fact, I didn't think of that, but he may have kept it. But what he said to me was, if you come on a homicide scene and there's money there, it's yours. He said, but make sure I get some. That was his words to me. So from that moment forward, it was like I got the permission to, if I come across some errant cash laying around, especially at a homicide scene, because they generally don't set you up by killing somebody. Like that's usually not the way the police department's going to set you up. Okay. Mm-hmm. Generally, I don't know that today they may do those types of things or stage a shooting. I don't fucking know. But so at that moment forward, I knew that to look for opportunities to enrich myself. And that wasn't like my goal, but it eventually became my goal.
How many people in your precinct were corrupt? Because it sounds like, the boss was corrupt. It sounds like.
So, yeah, I would suggest that he had a corrupt bent to him. He wouldn't be adverse to you. So don't forget, the boss was on the job 20-something years, right? So at that point in his career, he had gone through what they had called the cleaning of the Knapp Commission, which if you're familiar with New York City Police Department history, the Knapp Commission was done or initiated to eliminate corruption at all levels of the police department. And it wasn't that successful, by the way.
It seems like it, yeah.
It wasn't that successful. But what it did was it changed corruption in the New York City Police Department, because corruption in New York City Police Department, as in many departments, don't just think it's New York City. It was endemic throughout.
This is everywhere. I come from South Africa, right?
Yeah.
So I know all about corruption. Yeah. It's a very common thing all around Africa as well.
Right.
All over the world, there's some levels.
There's some levels, right. So when the New York City Police Department was going through the Knapp Commission cleansing, back then the corruption went from basically the top down, okay? So what happened now after the Knapp Commission, the corruption went just to the street and it didn't go up because the bosses became insulated because they were paid more handsomely than the patrolmen, right? And the patrolmen were the doers anyway. All the corrupt activity that took place for the most part, happens at street level. Now, the deep corruption where you're involved in white-collar bookings and stocks and all that shit, that's a different ballgame. That's for the feds anyway. They're all corrupt. But well, I hate them. But I hate them with the passion. And they know it, by the way. They fucking shadow ban me everywhere. And they do, by the way. But the thing is, corruption has to happen where people interact, right? Otherwise, there's no corruption. If people don't interact, there's nothing to corrupt. So years ago, the patrolman was doing the corrupt acts for the boss. at this point, when the bosses and the whole system gets exposed, the guys at the bottom, they're the ones who paid anyway with their dear lives, right? Because they're the ones who did the corrupt acts while they were paying up. So when the Knapp Commission ends and lays out the corruption in New York City, the patrolmen all got fucking hurt for taking care of their higher ups. So now the patrolman says, the way of the patrolman became, it's about me, not about you. It's about what I can get. And
you're just sick of risking your lives for
to
people
pay the boss
up,
higher up. Correct.
and then you're the one taking
the
fall.
shit. Right.
And
right. You got it. Yeah, you could draw the map from there. Okay, so then when you interact in a manner that can lead to corruption, you make a choice of not to be corrupt, which would be nice, or if you do make the choice to be corrupt, it's between you and that individual or your partner, not up. And that's how corruption continued after the Knapp Commission. And I came across it as a young patrolman. When I was in Queens, I witnessed things. I'm saying, well, that wasn't right. I didn't know what I was witnessing, but I knew it wasn't right. And then as I became a seasoned police officer, I began to see where it was happening. And one time in particular I talk about was when I made a car stop in another guy's sector. And he pulls me over while I'm issuing a summons to a motor vehicle operator for doing something. They blew a stop sign, which was no big deal. And I probably wasn't even going to give the guy a summons, but as I'm looking through his paperwork, the guys pull a patrol car, pulls up behind me and fucking does a car stop on me while I'm doing the paperwork for a summons with the other guy. He's like, "What are you doing?" "Well, we're writing the summons." That's not what I'm asking you. What are you doing here? "Oh, I don't know. I'm a police officer from the 7-5 precinct. I mean, I just pulled a car over." "Yeah, but you're in my sector. You don't pull cars over in my sector." I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, this is the ghetto, bro. There's nothing here. It's nothing here but crime, and 3 spots to eat in a 5 square mile area. And and it's like, you stay out of our sector. Don't come back in our sector again. You understand? Like at gunpoint, this guy's talking to me. I'm like,
cop to cop.
Yeah. The patrolman, this patrolman behind me, I'm giving you this look because he's standing like he's doing a car stop on me. I'm sitting here in a patrol car with my partner, and here's a guy off the side of the window with his gun in his fucking hand talking to me about don't pull cars over in my sector again. I'm like looking back. Is this fucking guy for real? I'm trying to absorb what's going on here. And this motherfucker's pulling me over. He's doing a car stop on me, telling me don't stop don't stop vehicles in my sector again. Stay out of it. And don't go to any of my spots to eat in my sector. There's like 3, And he had most of them because he's in the north end, which was the better part of the precinct. So people would go there because it was the better section where you get something to eat. Don't come here to eat in my sector and all this. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, this guy's got a fucking contract here or something. So I put it together, 2 and 2 together. There must be something going on up here, or there must be some reason that a guy doesn't want you in his sector. And I understand the territorialness of this is my sector, this is what I do. But to say don't pull a car over, don't give out any summonses, don't eat in many of my spots up here, like I began to see the job in a different light. Because like I had said, when I was in Queens, I saw things, but I didn't understand them. And now when I was in Brooklyn and I saw something similar, it began to make sense to me.
Well, from what I got from the documentary, I think one of the things someone said was the ghetto is a gold mine.
Yeah.
Forget Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Because in the ghettos, there's a lot of, drug dealing and nefarious acts going on.
Yes.
And
Chicky said that.
If you are corrupt
right.
with someone doing illegal things, they can't do anything.
Right.
If you try and pull the same thing in a more privileged area,
right.
you're going down for it.
Normally, yes, because they're usually padded up and protected quite well. If they're doing something corrupt in a privileged area, there's a reason they're getting away with it, right? But in the ghetto, everybody's doing something crazy. And I don't mean everybody, because that's a blanket statement.
Not everyone. Yeah.
Not everybody, but there's a large percentage of people that are flagrantly violating the law. And what are they going to do? Call the police? Are they going to call the police on you when you're robbing them or shaking them down? You would call it a shakedown. Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah.
We don't use the term robbing a drug dealer. We shook him down.
Did you ever feel guilty in a way for targeting people in the ghetto? Because a lot of them obviously are doing illegal things, but because of their circumstances, it's kind of led them into that lifestyle.
So that's a good question. And first of all, there is no circumstance that leads you into anything, right? You make that decision yourself. So just like I did. I made my own decisions. They make their own decisions because there's plenty of people that have left the ghetto and have done quite well. So I make that statement because a lot of people use that as an excuse. I'm from the ghetto. That's why, Thurgood Marshall was from the ghetto and he became a Supreme Court justice. So you know what I mean? But the fact is that the opportunities in the ghetto can seem less apparent and lead people to a life of crime more easily because the examples that are there. I mean, I just watched the movie Lucas. I don't know if you saw the Frank Lucas. Frank Lucas was probably the biggest heroin dealer in the history of New York City, if not the country. And he actually dealt his heroin to the mob. So that's how big he was. But he was looked up to as a role model in Harlem. And quite highly acclaimed guy. He wasn't a guy that they didn't look at him disparagingly. They looked at him with honor and dignity. And meanwhile, he was poisoning, half the ghetto and 20% of the rest of the country with his heroin. But when I watched the movie, I admired his character in the movie because the way he handled things. And of course, it was all bad, right? The guy's a major heroin dealer, but he had some dignity about him. He had some redeeming qualities about him. Like most people, and I even say this, you can either run a drug organization or run a Fortune 500 company. It's basically similar in a lot of ways.
Well, it's the same thing as what happened with Pablo Escobar. He was loved in Colombia.
Loved, yes.
Because he gave so much to charity. But I think a lot of people didn't take the time to go, where's this money coming from? Or they just didn't care.
They didn't care, right.
But I want to know, there was a story in the documentary where you were called because a lady was getting beaten by her partner.
Right.
He was a Rastafarian guy. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
So the woman actually, she was at the precinct. And my partner and I that day, Chicky happened to be my partner that day, which was not common. Chicky and I were in the same squad for a year and a half or 2 years together, but not in the car together. Chicky had a partner and I had one. And my partner was out that day and Chicky's partner was out that day. So we teamed up, and which was a marriage made in heaven. We were best friends, and unfortunately today we don't speak. But anyway, and I don't know why, because I speak to everybody else except Kenny. We put the girl in the car and we take her to her home on New Jersey Avenue. I think the address was 422 New Jersey, or it could have been 522. It was right off of Blake Avenue, right on the right, headed south on the right-hand side of New Jersey. I could take you to the house if you want to see it. So when we arrived, she got out of the vehicle with us and we went up to the door. And so we followed her in because her husband was there and she just wanted to get some things and leave. So we were escorting her to do so, to keep any tensions and problems between the couple happening. And when she opens the door, he comes to the door. And he doesn't realize that he's opening the door to us as well. And he looks behind her, she looks at us, he looks at us, and he turns white. And this guy was as black as an ace of spade. And he turns white. All the blood left his face. And she looks and she goes to close the door on us. Now, here's the woman who asked us to protect her from her husband. And she goes to shut the door on us because she knew something wasn't right now, right? Timing was not good. So, of course, the bells went off in my head. Uh-oh, we got something good here. So I breach the door, throw her out of the way, and he's trying to close the second door because it's a vestibule, and then inside the vestibule, he's trying to close the second door, which he had no chance when I got going. I was probably 210 pounds. He was about $145. Anyway, he's trying to hold the door closed, and he wasn't happening. I was getting in. No matter what, I was getting in. So then when I breached the door from him, I grab him by his dreads, and it was so quick. I grab him by his dreads and I drag him to the end of the hallway, and to the right it opens up into the living room, kitchen, dining room. And I got him in the hallway. I looked to the right, And Chicky comes into the right, and he sees this big, huge bag of marijuana. I mean, it was a garbage pail. It was bigger than a garbage pail. It was like a 55-gallon drum. And so we're like, what the fuck do we have here? So now his name was Robbie Smith. Now I take Robbie Smith by his dreads. I drag him into the living room. I got to contain this guy. I don't know what's going to go on with him. So I drag him by his dreads into the living room. And now, back in the 80s, people had mirrored walls. Like they were little 1 foot by 1 foot mirrors plated on the wall. So I put him in front of the wall, not realizing that he's looking in the mirror to look at us, to get a look at our faces, see who we are. And he's seeing what we're doing. So we're shaking the place down. Chicky this is the funniest part of the whole thing. Chicky comes out with the bag. There's a bag of marijuana here this big. You can't do nothing, but it's too much. There's too much fucking marijuana. The bag's too big. I can't walk out the house with that bag. It's just too big. Excuse me, I'm taking your marijuana. Then what? Someone's going to say, what happened to the marijuana, right? So, but Chicky has this duffel bag. It's a good-sized duffel bag. He takes the duffel bag, puts it up on the couch, takes out 2 guns, 2 9mm. He takes out 2 guns. He goes, oh, look at these guns here. He takes the guns, puts them in his fucking pants. He takes the bag. I go, what's in the bag? He goes, cash. He takes the cash. He takes the bag, zips the bag back up, and puts it on the couch. I said, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, I got the guns. I said, fuck the guns. There's cash in that bag. You get the bag out of here. What are you, crazy? And Robbie Smith's on the fucking floor looking at me like, you motherfuckers are taking my cash. I'm like, shut the fuck up, you. You're lucky. It's 2 guns. There's bags of marijuana, big bag like this, and a bag with cash in it. So we took about 10 grand, whatever it was. But we didn't take all the cash.
You left him some.
We left him some cash. So I find out how much cash was in the bag. Now, 7 months later, I get called back to the house. 7 months later. For an aided case. The young girl was sick in the home. I get called back to the house, and the woman comes to the door when the ambulance comes and the police come with the ambulance and sees me. And she starts screaming out, you robbed me, motherfucker, you robbed me. Now here I am. I took her back to the house, got her back in, and Robbie Smith, what happened was I told Robbie Smith he had to give me $4,000 a month. He fucking left. Motherfucker, he left the country. Like he just left.
The Rastafarian guy.
Yeah. Rather than come back and give me $4 grand a month, he left. Are you serious? Bro, we got a deal here. Anyway, I mean, how stupid is he? He had a fucking carte blanche for marijuana.
So you wanted him to pay you $4 grand every month?
Yeah. What the fuck? What? That's a deal. I mean, you get to sell your fucking marijuana or you pay me $4 grand a month. He fucking bolted. He wouldn't stay. So I get called back to the house 7 months later on an aided case. And the woman starts screaming. And two other cop cars happen to be there. How the fuck are they there for? I don't know why they're there. And so there's 6 cops there, 2 and 2, right? 2 and 2 and 2. It's 6 cops there. And she's yelling out, he robbed me, this motherfucking bad policeman. The devil, the white devil, whatever they were calling me, shit. So she's telling this cop, he robbed me for $24,000. So I said, she's fucking lying.
It was only 8.
It was only 9,000. Was no fucking, I gave him the money. So he told his wife, this motherfucker told his wife that the cops took his money. All of it. So now he used us against his wife by saying, you brought the cops here and they took all my money, $24,000. The motherfucker, I only took $8,000. So he's a liar. Not only is he a thief and a criminal, he's a liar.
And then there was another story where there was a kid that you chased home. And when you got to his house, there was scales everywhere and cocaine. Do you know the story?
Yeah. Jesus Christ, you know more than me.
Can you tell me about that?
That was, so it was Noriega's cocaine.
Noriega was?
Noriega, the head of, he's the head of Panama. He was the president of Panama.
Okay.
So just for a little history, Noriega became the funnel for George Bush's cocaine missions when the CIA was trying to help El Salvador. It's a big thing that went on. So all the cocaine came through Panama. It was set up that way. And then the cocaine would be distributed in America. And the money that came back in went to fund the CIA undercover operation. This is what they did. Anyway, I don't know all the details because I wasn't involved in the details. But so the president of Panama, Manuel Noriega, was a main conduit for cocaine into America. So this day, we get a call. Kid does a robbery in the street for a Kango hat. You know, back in the day, there was Kango hats. I don't know if you know what a Kango hat is.
No idea.
Kango hats were big, okay? Just like Jordan sneakers are big and, you know, the gold chains were big, Kango hats were big. So this young Panamanian kid, I didn't know he was Panamanian at the time, robs a local street kid for his Kango hat. You would think, I mean, oh Christ, they're robbing a guy for a fucking hat. Anyway, so he runs into his home, and he was slick. He was a slick motherfucker kid. He was slick. And we knock on the door, and he wouldn't let us in. I mean, I don't blame him. He didn't let the police in. But his downstairs neighbor, so it was a multifamily dwelling, and there was a common entry, but the downstairs neighbor let us in. So once they let us in, he ran upstairs, closed the door on us. Of course, we barged our way in, opened the fucking door. And when I got in the apartment upstairs, we couldn't find anything, but I saw a lot of money was spent in this apartment, like too much. This is a ghetto apartment. There's just too much money, too much cash. When you see excess shoeboxes and fine furnishings in a ghetto apartment, because most people in a ghetto apartment are not there long term. And if they are, they're poor. And being poor doesn't lend to $25,000 in furnishings in a small apartment, or 35 boxes of shoes up against a wall because there's no room to store them in your closet. So money's being spent here. So I knew right away something wasn't normal. We ended up going downstairs in the basement, and then when we opened the basement, there's triple beam scales and canisters of I think it's called, I forget the name of it, minoxidil, the cut that they use for cocaine. So I said, well, if there's cut and there's scales, there's got to be cocaine here somewhere. So sure enough, typical ghetto apartment, the curtains, they use curtains to separate rooms and close closets in, okay? So this closet had a curtain on it. That's a closet. Make believe it's a door because it's not, but it looks like a door. It acts like a door. So push the curtain aside, and inside the closet was briefcases, big, hard, leather-bound, wooden, plywooded, I didn't know they were plywooded at the time, plywooded, inch-thick plywood briefcases. They were big, solid, sturdy cases. So I pick up this suitcase. I'm like, this is fucking heavy. And not only was it heavy, it was, you know, like, and then I shook it, and I could feel something. It must be a whole pile of cash in here. I don't know what's in there. So we couldn't open the suitcase. It was locked. I'm trying to pry. I can't get nothing to open. This is really well made. You're gonna open. You're not opening this briefcase. So my partner finds a hacksaw. So he gives me a hacksaw. So I start hacksawing this fucking briefcase. And I'm at this in 3-4 minutes just trying to cut through the top layer of this briefcase. Finally, I'm able to separate the plywood, and up comes this plume of cocaine out of the fucking suitcase. I'm like, fuck, we got cocaine. Now I got to get in. Now you really got to get in. I start pulling out like half-pound, quarter-pound bags of cocaine out of this briefcase and start stuffing it in every hole and orifice we could find in our clothes and stuff. And so we left with the cocaine. And it was hard to take it out because, you know, there's cops everywhere. You can't rob cocaine with cops standing around unless they're with you, you know? And we didn't know. Because it's an armed robbery call. An armed robbery call, you're going to get 6-8 patrol cars to show up because it's a dangerous situation. And it was dangerous to rob the place with cops all around. So it was hard to otherwise I would have walked up with 3 briefcases and full of cocaine. So I couldn't get away with the coke. So I ended up stuffing it in my clothes. And turns out it was pure Peruvian fucking pink shale flake, which is like the best in the world. And so now we're going back to get the rest of it. About a half an hour later, we're going back to get the rest of it. And when we got back there was a fucking limousine outside. Black limousine, 4 guys standing outside the limousine with their trench coats on and machine guns under their trench coat. So I thought better.
So you decided to go around the block?
I thought better.
Yeah.
I thought better for my own safety. I just leave well enough alone. And I just fucking, my partner and I just left the scene.
And during this time, there was another precinct that was caught up in a scandal, the 7-7 precinct.
Correct.
Can you briefly tell me about that?
So the 7-7 is 2 precincts away. Okay. So it's probably about 4 miles to the 7-7 precinct from the 7-5. And what had happened was they were basically shaking down street dealers and busting into drug dens and taking their stuff and then reselling it like everybody was doing back in the days. It was quite common. Anyway, and so 13 cops get arrested and a big shit hits the fan and the 7-5's next. So immediately we shut everything. You know, the guys just, shit's going down. We're not, you're not going to be putting your hand in the cookie jar while stuff's happening. So, everybody took a back seat and guys started leaving.
Started leaving your precinct.
Yeah, leaving, just quitting the job, going to different assignments, like looking for egress, a way to get away. And at the same time, because I didn't leave yet, my inspector asked me to put in a transfer. He said, "I think you should get transferred. I think you're burnt out."
He's trying to help you.
Yeah, well, he's trying to help himself too. But yes, he's saying, "Look, you're burnt out. You need to get transferred out of here." So, I mean, how naive is that to say? Because what he should have done is had me transferred. Because for me to request a transfer to your precinct, your commander in the precinct, they're going to look at my jacket. I don't want this fucking guy. He's under investigation by 3 different locations. He doesn't come with this recommendation, this shiny recommendation. So it was impossible for me to transfer. So what they did was they sent me to Coney Island for the summer, which was nice. Coney Island was by the beach. So it was baby oil, sun tanning, and Budweiser. It was my whole summer at the summer detail in Coney Island. So the 7-7 breaks out. The guys in the 7-5 all get scared. They all leave. I go away to Coney Island. I come back from Coney Island eventually to the 7-5, and no one would work with me.
So you didn't have a partner?
No. My partner went to Key West, which was as far south as you can go in this country without going into Cuba. In fact, that's why he went to Key West. He said, if shit hits the fan, I'm going to Cuba. This is my partner.
And who ended up becoming your partner?
Kenny Urell.
His name was Kenny.
Kenny, yeah. He was in the 8-8. He was in the 7-5 precinct. He got transferred to the 8-8 precinct because he threatened to break a sergeant's neck, something like that. Broke a guy's hand.
Normal stuff.
Yeah. The sergeant, his boss, who yelled at him. His boss yelled at him. He said, "Don't yell at me."
Hey, boss, don't yell at me.
You don't yell.
I can't do a Boston accent.
Yeah. No, a New York accent.
New York accent.
Yeah. No, the boss yelled at him, so he told him to go fuck himself, and that if he ever raised his voice to him again, he would break his neck. And Kenny was the type of guy that could. And so the boss got scared and had him transferred to 8-8 precinct. So he was called a temporary assignment. So he was transferred to the 8-8 for a year, and after a year, he could come back. So I never knew Kenny while the shit was happening. And then when Kenny came back to the 7-5, while I was away on summer detail in Brooklyn, in Coney Island, he came to 7-5. I came back to the 7-5, and both of us, he lost his partner. His partner went to become a sergeant, and I had no partner. So now he had no partner, and I had no partner. And eventually it took about almost a year for us to hook up together completely, to become partners.
From what I could tell, he wasn't very fond of you.
No, he didn't want to work with me, but he didn't mind working with me, if that makes sense.
I feel like from what I got, he liked you.
Yes.
But at the same time, he didn't want to get caught up in the things you were caught up in.
Yes. More to the point, he thought that I was working for internal affairs. So he thought I was like the man. I was the rat. He didn't want to work with me because of that. Because why? Because all the people around me had left. And I was the only one still standing. So
he wasn't corrupt though, right?
So
when you started working with him.
So Kenny,
in the documentary, they made him seem like he wasn't.
So yes. So to be fair, Kenny was probably what you would consider a hard-nosed cop. He wasn't overzealous, but he made a lot of arrests for domestic violence. And oddly enough, he had a little of his own domestic violence situations that he probably perpetrated, but that's a different story. But I don't want to get into the weeds with it, but he was a little bit rough in his own home, to say the least. Maybe he saw it in his own home as well from his parents. I don't know, because I don't know if that's accurate, to be honest. But he was big on the domestic violence arrests because he liked the overtime. He was a big overtime monger. So he probably was one of the top overtime earners in the precinct at the time that I met him. And I'm like, dude, you're spending your whole fucking time in central booking and making arrests. I made what you made in like 3 weeks. I mean, all the overtime you put together in a year, I made it in 3 weeks. So basically, and I cajoled him into...
So you broke him down by saying, listen, no matter how hard you work, you're never going to make as much as I would doing what I do.
Correct. And you're going to spend, 80% of your life at work, where I'm spending 8.5 hours a day at work, and then 3 hours a day partying and banging whores and... Maybe, but no, mostly not, but some occasionally. But
after the messages you sent me, so
those are yours and mine.
Yeah, okay, I won't say anything. But, I mean, would you go out just to commit crimes, or would you wait for the opportunity to present itself, or would you go out actually seeking to do so?
So there were different things. So I would wait for the murders. Murders were great. Generally in the ghetto, if you get murdered over money or drugs. Generally. Now, there's the odd one who's mad at their husband or wife, whatever. But in the ghetto in the 80s, if you got shot, you were getting shot for a damn good reason. So I would make sure I responded to shooting scenes, which sometimes actually I got there too soon. Like, shit, this shit's still fucking happening. Oh, my God, will you finish shooting each other? Come on. One time it was really fucking scary. There was still fucking gunpowder in the air and people running like in the house. It's like, I got them in the house. Would you run, please? We're here. Hello, the police are here. Would you get the fuck out? I mean, and it was a big major drug den too. So yeah, but so I would wait for shootings, which were great, and then I would seek opportunities where eventually you would find and as we lead the story along, I would seek opportunities through a network of intelligence, right? So I would know that drug dealers, he knows drug dealers, we know your drug dealers.
This is what I want to get to next, yeah.
How do the, yeah.
Who was Cello?
So
actually, no, before Cello, can you tell me who Baron Perez was and the kind of relationship you had with him?
So Baron owned this Auto Sound City. Auto Sound City was a place where in the ghetto, people spent a lot of money on systems, radio, music systems, and
sound systems in their car.
Sound systems in their car were very expensive, and they don't have them today. They don't make them like this today. But back then, they'd take your whole car apart and make it like a disco. It was like a fucking disco. You'd be driving down the block with a disco in your vehicle, and I mean they had 20-inch woofers and I don't even know what they're called. Big speakers like this, like 2 or 3 of them sometimes in a car, and the wall panels would have big woofers and speakers in them. It was insane. But they were expensive. I mean, a good system back then was probably between $18,000 and $25,000. You had the gooseneck equalizers, which you have no idea what that is. It looks like this. This is what a gooseneck equalizer looks like, except it was all lit up. It was really cool looking. So they would have these kind of accoutrements that they would put in cars. And so no one had that kind of money to put in a $20,000 car. They put in a $25,000 system. So it was drug money, and it was pretty clear it was drug money. And you could tell by most of the guys that were dropping their car off, they didn't go to work that day. They weren't working. They were just dropping their vehicle off to get it. Well, they took the other vehicle out for a spin, and of course the gold teeth and the 40 pounds of gold around the neck sort of gives you away, you're sort of like advertising, I'm a drug dealer. And so Baron Perez had the shop, and that's where they all went, to him. So going to Baron's shop was a conduit to all the local drug dealers. And I never really thought of having a relationship with the drug dealers in that respect. But Baron, being a smart businessman, knew that if he was friends with me or my liking, he could utilize that to make money. And trusting me, which he did, obviously, where he might not have trusted others in the same respect, he was able to turn my uniform into a money-making operation with offering protection to drug dealers. Go figure.
And can you tell me who Cello was?
So Cello was our first entrepreneurial adventure. And he ran a drug spot up on Norwood and Fulton. At least one. I'm certain he had several others. I just don't know them all offhand. I think he actually had one where the cop was killed. But anyway, so Barron had approached him about being able to offer services through us, and he agreed to pay $8,000 for the week. Actually, I set the price for $8,000. I said, no, you got to give me $8,000 to do this. I don't know why. I just said $8,000, right? And so what happened was he wanted to know if the 4th of July weekend was a good weekend to just go ball to the wall and make sales and not be worried about undercover stings and stuff. So I just said, yeah, it's a great weekend for sales. Fuck do I know? I'm a patrolman. I'm not in narcotics investigations. And sure enough, it went off pretty well. He had a great weekend. It went off pretty well. He had 2 minor arrests near his location for a couple of vials of crack, whatever, or small bags of cocaine. Very minor, like 50s and 20s.
But nothing massive.
Nothing significant. So, and so I went on the assumption, which I could have been wrong, that it's 4th of July weekend. These cops take these details, like narcotics or whatever the detail that they're in, so that they can have a somewhat semi-normal life, right? So you hit it hard during the week, but come the holidays, you're with your family. So I went on that assumption. And Cello paid $8,000 for that assumption that I gave him. The problem with Cello was when he paid us, whoever sent the money over shorted every stack of, when a drug dealer pays, they pay in thousands. So each stack of 1,000 had $100 missing from it.
So someone was skimming it.
Someone skimmed 100 off of each stack. Who? I don't know. But so that left us $8,000. So it left us $700 short.
$800.
No, it was 7 though.
Okay.
It was only 7. But you would have thought. I think one stack had 1,000 in it. The other one didn't. The rest didn't. Maybe it's the first one, right? So I sent a message out that you can't short us. You can't do that. So he said, "Oh yeah, okay, no, don't worry about it. I'll get you the money." And he never came with the money. And then he told us to go fuck ourselves. We're not getting the money. I said, "Oh, okay." So then I parked in front of his spot for a week. And then when I wasn't working, I paid another cop to park his patrol car in front of his spot. So after about 4 or 5 days of this, he called up Barron and said, "I put a hit on this cop."
So because you were harassing his guys.
Everything. He couldn't sell. He couldn't sell a bag of water.
What were you doing to them?
I was just pulling people over, stopping at the store, getting out of the patrol car, walking around the store, saying hello to everybody. Just let them see us there.
So then he put a hit on you.
So he put a hit on me. Yeah. Now, I didn't know this guy personally, but from what I understand, he killed 28 people. He killed 28 people. I didn't know that. What the fuck do I know? I didn't see him kill them, right? So he put a hit on me, and I get the phone call from Barron. "You got to come in." I go, "What's up?" He goes, "I got to see you." So I went to his shop, and he said to me, "The guy put a hit on you." Now, it's funny because they actually knew about it in the precinct. They never told me, the motherfuckers. They actually knew that, and they never told me because they hated me. Believe it or not, they didn't give a fuck. So, and I never met Cello.
So you didn't know what he looked like?
I didn't know what he looked like, but I knew his car. I saw his car one other time. It was like a funny looking Renault. You know, like they dress them out. They dress some cars out and make them look more fancy than they were. So he had all these bibs and shit and fenders and all flared out and stuff. So I knew that was his car. They make it look like a Mercedes. I don't know what the fuck they do. Anyway, so I saw the car and I pulled him over, and he didn't know it was me because he never met me. So I pulled him over, and license, registration, insurance card. So he takes out his license, registration, insurance card, and I'm looking for his glove box, and I'm praying he's got a gun in the glove box, and I want him to go for it. That's just going through my head. So I say to him, I take his license, registration, and I don't fucking look at it. I don't give a fuck. I take it and I throw it back in his lap. I go, "You gonna put a fucking hit on me, motherfucker?" And he looks up and he goes, "Oh my God." And he turned the guy, the white Rastafarian, he looked whiter than the fucking blood left his face. And he's like, "Oh no." I says, "You put a fucking hit on the cop, motherfucker? Why don't we just do it right here in the street? Let's go. I'll let you out. I'll be a man. I'll let you out of your car. I'll let you out of your car." I'm looking at the glove box the whole time, hoping he reaches for his fucking glove box and just kill him in the car. That's what I was going to do. I was going to kill him. I mean, because if someone puts a hit on you,
you got to take it seriously.
You got to take it seriously. It's not a joke, you know? So I tell him, I'll be bigger than you. I'm not going to put a hit on you. I'm going to tell you, get out of your car right now, and we'll do a fucking Mexican standoff. You walk 10 spaces that way, 10 spaces, I'll walk 10 that way, and we'll turn around and we'll see who wins the fucking gun battle. Let's do it right now. And I was like, I don't know why I said this. I must have watched a lot of TV when I was a kid. I don't know. But that was, I called him out on it right there, and he fucking looked at me. He just shook his head. No. I said, then you call the fucking hit off right now, and you get it done. So I turned around, I left. About 15 minutes later, my beeper goes off. Because back then we had beepers. You don't know what a beeper is? I mean, you might not even ever seen a beeper.
It's like a little pager.
Yeah, pager on your side. And my beeper goes off. I go to Barron's shop. What's up? He goes, he took the hit off. He called me, and he's just $700. $700 was in his hand.
And then when did you graduate from petty crimes to very serious crimes? If I'm not mistaken, it was with a guy called Adam Diaz.
Yeah, so that was our prelude into seeing how this could work. Obviously, it didn't go off well because I'm threatened, getting hits put on me. I'm threatening to kill the guy who's supposed to pay me $8,000 a week, right? So that thing dissolved. But so I was done with that, and I was just looking for my typical shooting score, just because what happened was the street becomes noisy. When you start shaking down the street, at some point it becomes noisy, and you become a byproduct of it. Someone's going to say something. Even if they can't get you, you're going to become dirty and the noise about you. So I stayed away from street level stuff, but I would capitalize on shootings and things of that nature. So Barron, undeterred by this hit on his patrolman and whatnot, found another organization that would pay handsomely and be more, how would you say, refined? Because
more reliable.
Well, it's not much still reliability, but refined, because I say that because Cello's organization was street dealing. Diaz's organization was supplying them.
So can you tell me about his organization?
Yeah, so,
what did he do and how did he do it?
So Diaz's organization supplied street level people. So, but when I say street level, Diaz's organization wasn't handling the crack dealer stuff. He was handling the head of their operation stuff. So, for example, you have a spot like Cello had a spot. So Cello had a spot, probably sold $100,000 a day in cocaine in that one spot, maybe more. Maybe some days, like the holiday weekends, $1 million in sales. The guy would sell. It's a lot of money. But someone supplies him with that cocaine. That would be an Adam Diaz type. Okay, so because Adam Diaz would probably sell on a typical week 100 kilos. He would go through a typical week about 100 kilos. So he would get a shipment of 1,000 kilos that he would be entrusted with. So you're talking, this is big fucking numbers,
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about in marijuana, not so much.
Yes, right.
But in cocaine,
that's a lot.
That's millions.
That's millions, right. So he would get a shipment of 1,000, 1,500 kilos, and they would come from, massive organizations like an Escobar organization or not Cello, the Cali cartel. So he had relationships with people that were brokers between Escobar and him. And you can't get too many people in the middle of that. Otherwise, the numbers just keep going up too high. So, I mean, Diaz would probably pay, at that time, he was probably paying, when I was working with him, between $12,000 and $15,000 for a kilo. And a kilo back then, now, so kilos used to be 35, 40,000. And then during this period, they continued to go down in price because the flow was so huge. So by the time Diaz was flipping kilos in Brooklyn, when I met him, the prices were around 12 to 13,000 a kilo. So in order for him to make money, he had to sell it at 14 or 15,000, or at least break it down and sell ounces, or basically he was basically flipping kilos or half kilos. Most of his clients were buying that type of volume, 2 and 3 kilos. He probably had more 2 and 3 kilo buyers than he had half a kilo buyers, So he would break it down to what they would call Big 8. I don't know if you know what a Big 8 is. It's probably
an 8 ball,
but a big one. So there's an 8 ball is 3.5 grams, but a Big 8 is 3.5 ounces. So he would probably go as low as that, but not often. Most of his clients were half kilo and up, and probably more. Like I said, most of them were 2 and 3 kilos, because I would watch them go in his store with boxes of money into his store. So you don't carry. When you got a box of money, it's a significant amount. They would go in with shoe boxes. They walk in with shoe boxes under their arm with the money in it. That's how. I mean, it doesn't say money on the side of a Nike shoebox, but when you're going into a bodega with a shoebox, why are you bringing a fucking shoebox into a bodega?
There's money in it.
There's money in it.
And what was his character like? What kind of a person was he? Because he was, from the documentary, he was quite a funny guy. He was
He's
like,
funny.
When I looked at him, I thought of like typical mobster or gangster,
Yeah.
suave.
Yeah. Oh, he dressed
funny voice.
He dressed well. He had a sense of humor, but he also had a very like I guess if you picture John Gotti making someone laugh and then killing the guy next to him, that's how Adam could be. He could be ruthless, but if you were, so it's like anything else. If you're friends with a guy, you can do no wrong, except embarrass somebody, and anybody could do that, and that would be wrong. But he's got a personality. He's funny, and very generous with when he's got money. He's very generous. Right now, he's not doing this so well with money because he spent a lot of time in prison. He went to 8 years, then he went back for 13 more years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he did.
And what did he want you to do for him?
So he would pay me. So when I first met and linked up with Adam, I charged him $24,000 just to speak to us. And he thought that was hilarious. Like, you wanted me to pay you $24,000 to talk to you? I said, yeah. Otherwise, we can't talk. I needed money. I wanted the cash. So he sent a bag of cash in for $24,000 in it. And then we sat down and had a discussion. A big meal. It was like a sit-down meal. Funny because Barron's wife prepared it, and it was like a real formal meeting. And he's so likable. I mean, to be successful in any business, you have to be likable. I mean, I would think you would agree with that. And most people that are successful in business, most people have some redeeming qualities about them. And so yeah, he was likable and fun, and you could tell he had a little wild side to him. And I mean, I think he had like 5 girlfriends, for Christ's sakes, maybe more if he could remember them. He forgot that one. But he was just so likable and fun to be around, and and he was easy with his money and generous, and he had beautiful cars and beautiful women. I mean, it was the '80s, and it was just flashy, and he fit the part. He fit the part. Yeah.
And what did
he was a good-looking kid too. I mean, handsome, pretty almost.
And what did he want you to do for him? Yeah.
So he wanted me to. So it really wasn't what he wanted me to do for him. It's what I was willing to do for him, which was. So I made a better deal with him than the other people that we had a little run-in with. I wanted to offer him 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage for whatever his operations were open, which was probably. So the bodega hours. So his bodega hours was his hours of operation for his business because he owned bodegas. So I could only cover so much. I worked eight and a half hours a day. So I would be available to keep an eye on his shop while I was working. And then after work, I would have Chicky, who was no longer in the police department. He quit. I would have him cover the hours that I wasn't there. So I would put Chicky on, and I'd give Chicky $1,000 a week to cover when I wasn't working. And what we would do for him is surveil the neighborhood to look for undercover operations that may or may not be taking place, because you have to set up an undercover operation. You don't set up an undercover operation 25 blocks away. You have to be visually seeing what's going on at the location you're about to set up. So they'd have eyes on the ground near the operation, which is how I found the first potential. Actually, they went to raid the place, and I found them getting set up to raid the place. And
so someone was going to raid Diaz's place.
Correct.
And you informed him that they were going to raid.
Yeah, you're getting raided.
So he had time to get rid of all his shit.
He got rid of. There wasn't a gram of salt in the place.
I think you said that exact same thing in the documentary.
Sugar or salt, I don't fucking know.
And there was an incident where Diaz's drug house got robbed, and his money was stolen by a guy called Franklin.
Yeah.
What did he ask you to do to this guy?
He wanted me to kill him, but I wouldn't do that. So, actually, that's not true. I would have killed Franklin, but I didn't, thankfully. because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. But I only would have killed Franklin if he had been armed. So, but he wanted him dead. And so what I did do was I gave him Franklin's information. I gave him, I wrote Franklin a summons. I pulled him over.
So you found him?
I found him. It took me about 2 weeks to find him, but I found him. Because Franklin was very, he was wanted by every drug dealer in the neighborhood because he robbed everyone, a major guy. Every major guy he robbed. Him and his buddy Coke. It was Franklin and Coke. They were a team. One guy's name was Franklin. The other guy's name was Coke. Go figure. I don't think he was born with the name Coke. But they would stake out the places and hit him. They didn't give a fuck. You know, you're talking about robbing, like even Adam says in the documentary, he says, I had 13 men in the place. 10 of them had guns, and this fucking guy beat them to it. One guy with a willing to shoot gun took the whole place down.
So what happened when you found him?
When I found Franklin?
Yeah.
His wife was there.
His wife?
Was there, yeah. Saved his life.
But there was... Because Diaz said that you did report where he lived or something.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that?
I don't know. Well, I don't know what happened to him specifically, but he got shot 9 times. He got hit with 9 bullets in McDonald's up in the Bronx.
Because Diaz did say, he said, the producer of the documentary was asking him, is he still around?
Right.
And he goes, all I'm going to say is, he's not around anymore.
Right. Yeah, because we don't know who shot him, but he got shot 9 times in the Bronx.
Okay. So it could have been anyone.
It could have been anyone because, like I said, there was every drug organization in New York City was after Franklin and Coke.
And at this point, roughly how much money were you making a month?
8 times 4 divided in half. So I was making about $20,000 a month.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good. In the 80s, that's pretty damn good.
So 20,000 a month times 12 is like, how much is that? 20 times 10 is 200,000, 240.
Right. I broke it down to I was making more than the president of the United States at the time. That's how I calculated my numbers in my head.
President here, president here.
Yeah. It's just like, wow, okay, I'm making more than the president right now. I feel good.
Not the president of Peru.
No. Well, we know what the president made on the books in this country. Right now, we don't know what Biden's making because his son's got more money hidden around the world.
So now that you were making a lot of money, what did you do with it? Because you don't seem like the kind of guy to just sit on it.
Well, you know, I did sit on some of it, but a Corvette broke out in the middle of it, brand new.
You bought a Corvette?
Yeah. And a girlfriend that bought her a car and, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. A lot of foolishness took place with the money, you know.
And
condo on the ocean. Yeah.
Were you discreet with it? Or did you let people know that you had these things?
Well, I did pull the Corvette into the precinct parking lot and took the lieutenant's spot that was trying to go out with my girlfriend.
So you took his parking spot and put your Corvette there?
Yeah.
Show him who's boss?
Yeah. Right in his ass.
And didn't you think people would get suspicious?
I didn't give a fuck at that point. It was like, fuck you.
You just thought you owned the place?
I owned it. Yeah. And you know, so here's the truth. You know, I get a little cocky about it, but the reality is this. I was so tired of having to worry. At this point in my life, I was tired of worrying about what I was doing that I said, look, let's take a calculated risk. I'm going to put this fucking car in his spot, right? Right in his spot. He's going to shut its fucking, because you're trying to get my girlfriend the whole time. He's going to realize that ain't happening. And if they want me, they got good reason to come get me right now. And they didn't get me. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I just put the sticker, it was $38,000 on the window of the car. I made, at that time, $27,000 a year. At that time.
From the police department?
From the police department. My car was $38,000. The sticker was on the window. I parked it in lieutenant's spot. And
another thing you said was that you were making so much money that you forgot to pick up the checks.
That happened.
From the police department.
That happened a few times. It wasn't like I forgot. I knew they were there. They were safe.
You weren't in a rush.
They were safe. I didn't fucking need them. I mean, we can laugh about it. Of course, it's stupid and foolish, right? But, you know, when I look back at it, I'm 62 now. I look at that stupid 20-something-year-old kid did. What an asshole. I threw my life away. But, we laugh and we cajole about it because it's actually, it's a train wreck that we're watching back. We're looking back at a train wreck, right? So you're like, look at this stupid motherfucker. He's throwing his life away. And everybody's looking at it like, when's it going to end, right? But think about it. You see a young police officer who's got 4 homes, a condo on the ocean, a brand new Corvette, a girlfriend, a wife, a bunch of kids, and you go, this guy, it doesn't work like that. How is this happening? And like, if I look back at that guy, I'm like, doesn't he see where this is going? I mean, but I'm sick. I got a little bit of experience now in life, right? But the funny thing is this, and this is how sick the world is in your head. I know that the people that are selling drugs got brand new Mercedes-Benzes, gold chains around their neck and diamonds in their teeth. And I'm telling them, don't do that because you're bringing attention to yourself. And here I am, I pull a brand new Corvette and park it in the lieutenant spot. And of course, my rationale that I'm telling you, which was at the time, I wanted them to make a decision because all I kept hearing was, they're coming for you, Dowd. They're coming for you, Dowd. That was 1988. I don't get arrested till 92. When are you coming? Can you get this over with? Because I can't stop me. You know what I'm saying? I can't stop me. This is too good, but really it was torture, really, when you think about it. Sure, it was exciting. There was a lot of money involved. There was a lot of things that normal police officers wouldn't have, but I was destroying myself,
What was your partner, Kenny, right?
Right.
What was his job in all of this?
Just to say yes.
And he was just along for the ride.
That's all he fucking did.
And when did you start doing armed robberies?
Well, you'd have to say everything you did as a police officer, when you took money from somebody, you were doing an armed robbery.
But there was a point where you were physically breaking.
How do you know? How the fuck do you know this? I never told anybody this. I might have mentioned it once or twice in my whole life. We were going after drug dealers off duty in our home vehicles. Yes, we were setting them up. How the fuck do you know? What are you fucking listening to my conversations? we were going after them off duty. We were setting them up. Yeah, we were breaking their homes. Yeah. And
would you ever hurt anyone?
No. I mean, a little roughed up if they need be, but most people are pretty compliant with a gun in their face. And we go in as police officers, so it's like they think they're getting raided until they realize these motherfuckers ain't raiding us, they're robbing us.
And what was going through your mind when you did that?
We never get enough. There's never enough there. It's never enough because it's always. So we would set people up that we knew would dealing drugs, and but something about these guys, they were slicker than you thought because they would keep it where we thought they kept it, but we couldn't find it, and they wouldn't give it up. I mean, they wouldn't fucking give it up because they knew they weren't going to get killed. But if we were real killers, and we, and maybe fired a couple rounds into their knee first or something, we probably would have gotten what we came there for in many situations. But what happened was the guys, we knew every drug spot in the neighborhood. I mean, think about it. We're patrol. There's 5 or 6 of us that are involved. So if my eyes don't catch it, your eyes might. So there's 5 or 6 guys that are involved in this whole thing, and we all know. I know 150 spots, at least. I go to bed at night and go over every spot in the precinct that I know of. And I take block by block, avenue by avenue. So I go up and down the block in my head every fucking night to see how many spots there were and which ones that I think would be good to hit. I mean, this is what I spend my night doing while I'm just about to fall asleep. So, yeah, it was a treacherous time.
And did you ever have any near-death experiences during that time?
I don't know. I mean, I did have a guy threaten to kill me more than once. I had a guy on the phone tell me he was going to come kill me. In fact, he told me I better duck right now. He's going to put a bullet through the window in my head, in my home. So, but no one ever shot at me. And I never shot at anybody.
There was also a point, if I'm not mistaken, that...
I did fake shoot at somebody, though, a couple times.
Just like a little desktop.
Just to scare them. Some guy jumped in front of my car one night on my way home and tried to kill himself. So he pissed me off. So I took my fucking little 25 Beretta out and I fired a couple of rounds at the ground, 10 feet from him. He called the police. Can you imagine? He calls the police. He tries to get run over by my car. He jumped right in front of my car in the middle of a highway. I hit the brakes, almost hit him, and he's waiting. He wanted to be hit by the car.
He was probably trying to sue the police department.
No, my private vehicle. He didn't know who I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was 3 a.m. I was coming home from somewhere. And he jumps in front of the car, tries to get hit. So then you want to get hit, motherfucker? And I just fired a couple of rounds at the ground. Take that. And I left. The police pulled me over about 20 blocks later. They pulled me over, firing rounds at the guy.
And then there was also a part, if I'm not mistaken, where you try to circumnavigate the whole system. And instead of working for someone that was selling cocaine, you wanted to sell it yourself.
Well, yeah.
So how did you start dealing cocaine?
So first of all, if I found cocaine, which I had a couple of times, I would find a market for it. I mean, it was big. Cocaine was a big object back then. Anybody wanted it. If you had it, they wanted it. And then I ended up getting it wholesale pricing from Diaz. And then I found a couple of people after Diaz. Diaz went back to the Dominican Republic, and then he went to prison. So after he left, I still had avenues. It was funny because I could walk into a store in uniform and buy cocaine. People would sell it to me.
They just didn't care.
I would tell them I want some cocaine. They'd sell it to me.
Well, they probably knew who you were.
Well, they trusted me. Fucking crazy.
And were you using a lot of drugs during this time?
Not specifically, but eventually.
Can you tell me about that? What you were using and how did it change you?
Yeah, so I probably, my initial foray into using cocaine, I was after a hockey game. My partner that I was at the time, who's not the partner that we talk about in the movies and stuff like that, he wanted to do some cocaine. And I never did cocaine. But we were hanging out drinking and doing, he wanted to continue drinking, but he wanted to do cocaine because doing cocaine enables you to drink more and keeps you from getting too hammered. And so he pulled out some tinfoil with cocaine in it and showed it to me. He says, I'm going to do something. And he says, and you're doing it too. Well, I said, all right, well, I'm your partner. I'm not going to, I don't have to do it. But he said, no, I want to make sure you do it. So this way we're both on the same page here. I said, okay. So he did some, I did some, and that was it. That was the first time I did cocaine. It was the night of the hockey game between the fire department and the police department in New York City, which is like the biggest hockey night in New York City. It's bigger than the Islanders versus the Rangers, if you know anything about ice hockey. So it's a big rivalry. It's a big party, and in fact, we won that game. My brother was the star on the team, and so my partner and I did a blast of cocaine, and then I didn't do it for 3 to 4 months, and then New Year's Eve, I think it was. I figured, let me just fucking do a couple toots for New Year's Eve, just try it. And then I did it every day for 90 days in a row. And then I ended up in a rehab. I was doing it so much. And then off and on for the next 10 years, whatever it was, 7 years, whatever it was before I got arrested.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this a lot on the podcast, but I'm a recovering drug addict.
Okay.
And my main drug was cocaine as well.
Really?
But
Okay.
I used to do Rohypnol. I used to do a lot of benzos. Weed, alcohol.
Yeah.
Did heroin for a bit.
Okay.
Smoked a bit of tuck every now and then.
You did it all.
I did psychedelics.
Like a garbage pail.
Yeah, so I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you it was probably hard being around, well, not hard, but you were around around drugs all the time.
Yeah. So
kind of unavoidable.
So yeah, I put myself in a position to. I love the power of being able to be the guy that had the cocaine. There was something to it, It was a powerful thing, and you may know the experience as well. And the money, if I wasn't spending money on it, which I generally wasn't because I was making money by selling it. So to me, it was an unlimited supply, right? Because I didn't do a lot of cocaine, and I still, in my life afterward, when I had some, what would you call relapses, I never used a lot of cocaine, but I used it. So I used it to enhance rather than it was the addiction, if that makes sense. There's the difference between I have to do it or hey, I'll do a couple bumps. That's how I used cocaine. I did a couple bumps. And it was a leveler for me.
And at this time, did you consider yourself a cop, a gangster, or a drug trafficker?
Yeah, that was a question asked of me at the Mullen Commission hearings, which I'm famous for. And I said both, and it's an oxymoron to say both, right? What are you? You can't be both. But I felt like both, because you can only be one, right? You can either be a cop or a bad guy. So, but it's odd because I felt, and this is an oxymoron. I felt as though I was a good police officer in many ways.
You would have been a good undercover police officer.
If they gave me the opportunity to be so, I would have loved it. Sure, they would have got a lot of good work out of me. That's for sure.
And there was another story. It was quite a big part of the documentary about a cop called Robert Venable.
Right, he's dead.
Can you tell me what happened surrounding that incident?
So that was a very sad moment, obviously. We don't take this lightly, and I mourn that loss quite often. In fact, I remember that night that he was killed. I was working with Kenny, and we had picked up an armed robbery suspect, and we put him in the back of the patrol car. We were taking him to the precinct for somebody else. I don't know. We collared him for somebody else. Anyway, and as we pull him to the back of the precinct, bang, 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 comes over the radio, shots fired, 1013, a live call, not a phone call, a live, actual radio transmission. Bradford and Pitkin. So as soon as we hear it, I got a guy in the back of a patrol car. What am I going to do? I hear a cop screaming for help. So I just throw the guy out of the car. Just get out. Just get out. Find your way. He's handcuffed. Just get out. See ya. I just take off. And I head over to Bradford. And Central's saying Thadford and Pitkin. And I'm screaming in the fucking radio, it's Bradford and Pitkin. P.S., we show up at Bradford and Pitkin. And as we pull up, the fucking gunpowder's still in the air. I'm hearing gunshots go off as I'm pulling up. And there's this, and I'm seeing a uniformed transit sergeant with a man in his arms. And the guy is huge. Not the transit sergeant, but the guy that shot. I don't know who he is. And it's a black guy. And the guy goes, he's a cop. Now this sergeant's walking with him in the street like this. I couldn't get him in the patrol car to get him to the hospital.
Because he was so big.
He was so big. His legs were hanging out the fucking door. But we're driving down Pitkin Avenue with the body and with the dead shot cop. He's shot in the head. He got shot right in the middle of his head and out the back. And the blood was coming out of the front of his head. And we put him in the car and we're driving down Pitkin Avenue. I'm giving over the whole transmission. Pitkin to Penn, Penn to Linden, Linden to Brookdale. And I'm screaming over the directions so that the cops out there in the street could block off anything in my way. I don't know if they did or didn't, but I didn't even see the traffic. I just went bang. I just took off. I just fucking, and you couldn't imagine the streets I had to traverse under the the elevated train and cut through.
Just New York City.
Yeah, I went opposite the traffic coming at me. I went right at them. It's the easiest way to beat traffic. You can't go behind cars. You go right.
Because they can all see you.
They can see you and move. Right, the ones behind you, they don't fucking have no clue. So. Yeah, so we raced to the hospital with him and blood coming out of his head. And guy says, he's got a vest on. I said, so fucking move it. Don't just talk about it. Do something. Pump on his chest. Keep him alive. Anyway, we showed up at the hospital and they didn't know he was a cop. And then they realized he was a cop. They started to work harder on him. And unfortunately, he wasn't going to make it anyway. He was basically out of it. When you hit in the middle of your forehead with a fucking round from him. I think it was from a Mac 10 or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was a high velocity weapon that hit him, and he eventually expired about 2 a.m, and it was a tough day, because while I wasn't responsible for it, I felt it because I was condoning drug activity in the neighborhood. I felt as though you had played into it a little bit. yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that I did it because I didn't.
No.
And I certainly didn't know the persons that did it, nor was I involved with them, those people. But in some way, you're still involved, right? Because you allow this to happen in your neighbor. You're not dissuaded. So look, it probably could have and would have happened anyway without my wrongdoings. But you still feel, because you're dirty, that you are a contributor. Because I mean, Pablo Escobar contributed to that guy's death, right?
Because as a cop, you're not actively stopping crime.
Right.
I'm
allowing it to flourish in many ways.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
you just feel guilt for that.
Yeah. It was a horrible feeling. It haunts me today. And you bring it up, and it twists me still. Because there's a man that's dead due to illicit activity, and that I was part of illicit activity that in some manner or another, while it didn't directly cause this, it's still, you made a right-hand turn and the whole world changed from that. If you make a left, the world is different the minute you turn directions. So to me, when I made the wrong turn, which was to go corrupt, I affected that in some respect. And yeah, it was heavy on my mind, and I forgot that his name was Robert. I thought it was John, and I got castigated for not knowing his first name. Well, I mean, I knew it was Venable. I put the guy, I saw his name, but I didn't know and people castigated me for not knowing his fucking first name, which is unfortunate. I should know it, but I didn't. I thought it was John. For some reason, I thought it was John. Maybe there's a John Venable that I knew, so I just adopted the name. But I caught a lot of shit for not knowing his name. And but the odd thing is that when I reunited with Kenny for the documentary that we did, we met at his park, Robert Venable Park, and it was pretty touching to be there, So yeah. How do you say sorry for a loss that you maybe helped contribute to in a way by not being the person that you should have been, It's a little tough to swallow.
And why didn't other cops turn you in?
So that's not an accurate statement, although it's partly accurate. Other cops were talking and notifying people that they thought I was corrupt, because I didn't show you corruption if I didn't trust you. So if you weren't corrupt, you wouldn't know that I was corrupt. You might have heard that I was corrupt. You might have seen something that looked corrupt, but you would never know that what I did was corrupt, because I wouldn't tell you I'm getting $8,000 a week from Adam Diaz. But when I showed up with a bag full of money and I was buying rounds at the bar, you were happy to fucking take them, and then you wanted to know. I tell you, this is an odd story. We had we had 12 cops come to Kenny and myself and say, we want in. 12 rookie cops came to us and said, we want in. And I was actually disheartened by that, because I wasn't like this from the start. And I earned this fucking corruption, oddly. I worked my way to being corrupt. I wasn't disillusioned at first. I thought I could be a patrolman. I thought I could be a police officer. I thought I could do a good job. But these guys were out of the academy 6 months. They want to know how do we get in? I mean, you fucking kidding me? Go wear some shoes out. Become a policeman first before you ask to be corrupt. I was appalled. Fuck do you want to be corrupt for? You don't even know how to be a cop yet.
How would you guys treat cops that were considered to be rats?
Oh, they wouldn't be around us. They would not be around you. You wouldn't be around them. You wouldn't let them around you. And if they were around you by force, let's say like you wouldn't speak to them. It would be like a death silence in the patrol car. You wouldn't have any interaction with them. They'd be ostracized.
Another big part of the documentary it wasn't a big part, it was mentioned quite a bit though, was that cops don't turn in other cops.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy to me. Because your whole job is to serve and protect.
Correct.
But the people that are serving and protecting are not doing either of those things. They're making things worse. Not everyone, obviously.
No,
a handful.
Right.
But why do cops do that? Why is it? Why?
Yeah,
why do they want to protect each other so much?
Right. Can you help me with the answer to this? Because the answer is in life itself. So I have to leave my house every day and go out there and do a job that, if I'm not corrupt, that requires me to risk my life to save yours. And so when I risk my life to save your life, the guy next to me saves my life because you put me in harm's way, or someone else puts me in harm's way. This guy here, this say Michael Dowd, this person, has helped save me in the most difficult times. So I see him take some money from a drug dealer. Who gives a fuck? He just saved my life last week. I called for backup. He showed up. He dragged the guy, put him in the car, and drove him to the precinct for me. You know, he allowed me to go home without breaking an arm or leg or getting beat up or shot or stabbed by some perpetrator. This is how, I mean, it's like soldiers don't,
You go through a lot together.
Yeah, when you create that, it's not, you want to work in an environment that gives you safety. Even if someone's doing something corrupt, they can still save your life, right? I mean, there's many a story about the fireman lights a fire, right? But he goes in and rescues somebody in the middle of the fire, right? I mean, these things happen. So I'd rather have a corrupt cop come save my dead ass than have him look at me and say, die. That makes sense?
Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
So, well, I mean, the thing is this.
Because I would rather have a clean cop.
Save your life.
Save my life,
but
yeah.
If the corrupt one shows up,
but
will you take it?
I guess the corrupt cop as well might have a bit more street smarts as well. So,
you see,
yeah.
you're getting, that's what happens. Yeah. When the corrupt guys showed up,
you probably felt safer, actually.
They felt safer.
Yeah.
Because they knew shit wasn't going to go.
It's like, I don't want to go into a dangerous area with someone that lives in
Long Island.
Yeah. I want to go with a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Or with a gangster.
Right. You want to hang out with a tough guy.
Because that's how you would feel safe. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, can you tell me, just before we come towards the end here, can you tell me one of the craziest things that ever happened to you during this time? I just want to open it up, whatever story comes to mind.
See,
something that
I've been asked this before, but when you live a life of craziness,
it's impossible to pick up one moment.
Pick up a spot. I mean, the craziest thing that happened to me was when I got arrested. I mean, it was like insane. The whole scene.
So let's get to that.
It's just insane.
So can you walk us through how you got caught?
No, it was too long. It's fucking long, man. How I got caught in the end, how I got caught.
Can you just tell me about the first time that they came after you?
The first arrest.
The first arrest.
So I'm working in the 94th precinct with my partner, Thomas, at the time, Tom Massia. And so it was the day after the Rodney King riots started in LA. So the whole city was tense. And yet there was no calls on my radio, like nothing. I'm like, this is fucking odd. This is the second day in a row there was no calls on my radio. Why? Well, I didn't know this, but they were already going to arrest me. They knew they were going to arrest me. And so they had me pick up the inspector, one of the inspectors or something, oddly enough, and drive him around to one or two locations. And he asked us a couple of questions about ourselves, our careers. So they knew, I didn't know this at the time, but they were setting us up. They were going to arrest us soon. Okay, you guys, oh yeah, oh, that's great. How long you worked here? Oh, good. Okay, have a nice life. Like he was getting to know the guys that are about to get arrested because they told them we're going to arrest them. I didn't know that they told him because he didn't tell me. So no calls. Eventually they call me to the precinct. They go 10-2. So I go, how about a 10-1? No, 10-2. Because 10-1 would have been, I would have called the precinct. They said, no, come into the precinct. I want to speak to you. I looked at my partner. I said, this is odd. We don't get 10-2s that often. And when we do get a 10-2, it's usually something that they want us to do. But there's nothing going on here. This is a little weird. And because the only call we got in 2 days was this one 10-2. That's it. And so I pulled up to the precinct. I saw a car to my left. I said, ooh, that doesn't look right. Two guys in the front seat of the car sitting there. I never saw them before. I walked into the precinct, and then sure enough, they come in behind me with their badges in hand. Internal Affairs were taking you for a drug audit department ordered drug test. Okay. All right. So I fucking failed the drug test. I lose the job. No big deal. It just didn't sit right. Something more was wrong because I had seen them following me during the day. Unmarked cars were following me. And they weren't New York City. They were definitely not New York City. And I didn't want to spook my partner. But I saw them following. In the patrol car, they were following us. We had just picked up a half a kilo and sold it that day to Kenny. So, that may be why. But I didn't know why they would be following us because I get followed a lot. So I didn't know what this one was about. And sure enough, it was, so they called us into the precinct. They take us for the Department of Drug Test, which I had cocaine in my pants. I couldn't get rid of. They were everywhere. I was going to throw the coke, I'll open the window and throw the cocaine out and get rid of it. No, not happening for me. I couldn't get rid of it. Because they had no handles on the window. There's no handles on the door. I couldn't do anything. Fuck. So I said to the guys, I said, this is a little odd. So I started smoking cigarettes. Couldn't open the windows. Nah, we'll choke with you. Dude, can you open the fucking window? They wouldn't even open their window in the front because I would have reached up and threw out the fucking cocaine. Nothing. Anyway, I'm like, this is weird. I go, this seems like a little bit more than a drug test, if you ask me. You got me in the backseat of a car with no handles? No, we're just taking it for Department Order drug test. Now, wait a minute. Now, think about this. I'm a fucking human being. I don't have to be in this car right now. But I do it like a subservient little dick. I'm in the back of this car, like listening to guys that are about to arrest me. And I know something's not right, but I don't want to believe it. I'm like ultimate optimist. And then I get out of the patrol car, out of the unmarked car, and they're everywhere. There's fucking lines of cops. I'm like, what the fuck is this for a drug test? I get upstairs to the 16th floor, 17th, 16th floor, and there's this lieutenant who's been waiting to piss test me for 3 years. He's like, yeah, he's so happy.
The guy you parked in
No, but he was one of them type, little fucking prick. And he was trying to get me for years. And now he's got me smiling. I go, yeah, you're happy, huh? I'm looking at him like, you're a happy motherfucker right now, aren't you? I just had a fucking half a gallon of vodka, a fucking big drink of vodka, a couple blasts of cocaine. I'm going to burn this test right up. It's going to be perfect. They're going to be happy. I finish. I hand him the pig. Like, there you go, motherfucker. Take it. I'm done. I know I'm fucking going to get fired. And then in walks Suffolk County Police Department, Suffolk County Detective so-and-so. Yeah. I go, Coletti was his name. My mother's cousin. Suffolk County Detective Coletti, you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Like, okay. Yeah. All right. Now what?
So they arrested you
in New York City in the police department medical building.
So they arrest you, and then there was a photo taken of you and two other cops chained together.
Yeah.
It's called a cherry...
Daisy chain.
Daisy chain. Yeah, a daisy chain. So that you were all walking out, and someone took a photo.
Right.
And that photo... What happened when that photo got out?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
I mean, there was...
I was in prison.
But there was coverage all over the place.
All over the world. Yeah. All over the world in Germany.
It was a massive story.
All over the fucking world. Yeah. They put it on the front page of L.A. Times. So they would fucking calm down L.A. Because, there's corrupt cops in New York now. Because they just had the Rodney King meetings in L.A.
And
it was a good photo.
Yeah, it was a cool photo.
It was a good photo, to be honest with you.
So then what happened after you were arrested? Did you were in prison? Or you were like in holding?
So holding, then I got out on bail.
What happened when you got out on bail?
Well, when Kenny set me up with put wires on his body and began to set me up into this operation that the feds created.
And can you tell me about that operation?
So people don't understand the depths of it because it's deep, and we're going to do a movie about it. So
you want to skip over it?
It's just deep. And the bottom line is they set me up. Kenny put on a wire.
Kenny, your partner.
My partner. And while out on bail, and he encouraged me to do something that I normally wouldn't do. And but because I was a greedy motherfucker looking to leave the country, I put myself in another horrific situation, and it cost me dearly. Yeah, it probably cost me. They were offering me 3 to 9 in the state, and instead the feds picked me up, and then I was facing life. When I walked into federal prison, I was facing life. And I walked out of there with a 14-year sentence, which people would say is a gift, and in some ways it is.
And how much time did you end up serving?
12 and a half years.
What was that like? What was life like in prison?
It was very exciting.
You just keep giving, don't you?
It was very exciting. No, fucking prison sucks. But to tell you the truth, I actually had a pretty decent sentence. You know, I don't mean time. Every day is long, you know. I don't know if you did a day yourself, but if you did, every day is...
I've been arrested twice, but I've never gone to prison.
Right. And every day is a long day. And the time actually goes fairly quickly, but the days are long. But the reality is... I was fortunate enough to be able to stand on my own and be willing. So you have to be willing. If you're in prison, you have to be willing to die. And if you're willing to die, you'll live. If you're not willing to die, then you'll probably be beat up and fucked with. So.
Did you make any, I mean, were you committed to stopping your life of crime at that point?
Yeah, sure.
You were done with it?
Well, you know, so in prison, not yet. It would take a couple of years of being in prison to see the light. And to recognize that I would say, so, and this is a good lesson. I would say that most people, it takes them a year to 3 to begin to change their thinking. 3, because if you notice, most people do a short little sentence, they're right back to crime.
Well, it's the same thing with addiction. Where when I was younger, I went into rehab for 3 weeks.
Right.
And it just wasn't enough time because you're just kind of getting sober at that point. It's just leaving your system. You're feeling a little bit normal.
Same
and then you get thrown back on the streets.
Yep.
And suddenly you're right back to it.
Right back at it.
And the second I got released from rehab at the age of 16,
right,
I went straight back to using drugs.
Right.
I went again when I was 21 and I stayed for 6 months.
Right. Right.
And I stumbled when I came out after a few months, but I've been clean for 4 years now.
Good
so
for you.
I can see what you mean by it takes time.
Yes, it does. It takes a couple of lessons or some real time. And but that's only for people who actually want to change. Some people go in, they're committed to come out as a better criminal, right? So that's a different approach. They go to prison, and then while they're in prison, they learn the better approach to criminality rather than learning the better approach to life in general and overall living. So yeah, I would say at the 5-year mark, you know. The 1 to 3 is needed for many people that it's entrenched in their thought process, but the 5-year mark, you're done or you're never going to be done. That's where, because at 5 years in prison, you no longer really think about the outside world. You think about the inside world. You have thoughts of the outside world, but your thinking and your daily process becomes prison life. You're not. In the first 3 or 4 years, you're thinking, I got to get out there. I got to get over this fence. There's got to be a way. But then after the 5-year cometh of age, you recognize that I'm going to do this sentence and I'm going to do it my way now. I'm going to do it for a way to benefit me. So yeah, so it's not an easy awakening. And I can see why people that do very short stints, like a short rehab, they go back to they go back to it, yeah.
And during your time, how much money do you think you made in total?
In the rogue aspects, I probably made $500,000 in rogue stuff, which is not a lot of money, but back then it was a considerable amount of money.
Probably like $1.5 million today.
Yeah, right.
And did you get to keep anything?
No.
You lost your condo, you lost your cars.
So most of those things were actually lost through non-payment.
You stopped paying them?
I stopped paying them because I wasn't there. You know, I couldn't make that nut every month. And people that were renting, because I was renting homes out, they stopped paying their rent because the guy's not here. Fuck them.
And just coming towards the end, biggest regrets?
So there's 2 things, okay? And I'm honest. So I wish I stole more.
And you wish you hid more?
I wish I stole more because I had many opportunities, or I wish I never did it at all. So it's like one or the other. But the reality is, if I just done my time, my 20 years as a police officer, I would have all I needed in my life. But because I didn't do the right things, my life has been pretty much a modern day tragedy. But the one good thing is I get to speak to guys like you now and share my story. And we'll be doing a movie and stuff like that about it, which is exciting, you know. But not everybody's going to come out like that. Not everybody's going to get a story or get a movie or get a documentary, which is very well done. The 7.5. Did you see the documentary itself?
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was very well done. And so they followed my lead. They did what I said in that documentary. And Tiller Russell, the director, he followed my lead. I told him to do it this way. I said, just make them not hate me. I said, if you make them not hate me, you'll have a good fellas in uniform.
But often in movies and documentaries, even the villain, which in this case was you,
me, yeah.
Is made to be a likable guy. And you are a likable guy.
Thank you.
And it's something that I've noticed with people that I've worked with that have done really bad things. I mean, I've worked with murderers, gangsters, some bad people.
Yeah.
But they're still human.
Right.
And there's a lot of redeeming qualities. But also people can change.
And people do change. But, I mean, it's still in them, though. It's just they put it to rest.
Yes. And last piece of advice I want you to lay down. So I think most people reach a point in their life where they have to ask themselves, do I do the right thing the hard way?
Right.
Or the hard thing the easy way?
Right, right.
What would you say to those people?
I would say, if you're willing to suffer the consequences of your actions, do what you feel. But there's consequences to every action. I personally wish that I had done it the hard way, not the easy way, which ended up being harder than the right way. Yeah. You know, the turtle and the rabbit, the story's there. It's been told for 1,000 years, you know. Eventually that turtle's 100 years old. The rabbit lives about a month, 6 months, stops. Some eagle comes down, eats it for lunch.
It'll eventually catch up.
It eventually catches up. Yeah. There's no free lunch out there. There's no free lunch. You're going to pay for it one way or the other, whether it's self-implosion, addiction, abuse, family abuse, loss of children, loss of wife. I mean, I had a perfect life. I had to throw it all away.
There's no free lobster lunches.
There's no free lobster lunches.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wide Awake podcast, and I'll see you all very soon. Cheers.